Okay, so let's get into a little bit about HIV management. When we think about HIV management, we actually have to go back to the life cycle of the virus. To remind ourselves of the life cycle of the virus, as you know, the virus enters the cell. As I said, it was an RNA-containing virus, and it enters the cell through specific cell receptors on the surface. These cell receptors are called the CD4 cell receptor and the CCR5 cell receptor, and there are 2 HIV medications and now 3 that work at that level of viral entry. The reason I'm not mentioning them or going over them in any detail is because these are not used very commonly and they're not very potent. Then the HIV virus enters the human cell. And when it enters, it makes its RNA go into DNA. That's the reverse transcriptase. That is why it's called a retrovirus. It's an RNA-containing virus, but to cause problems in the human body, it needs to make its DNA look more like our DNA, and it needs to reverse transcribe its RNA into DNA. That process of reverse transcription is fought by a number of HIV medications. Some of them are called nucleotide and nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, or the NUCs, and there are also non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors called the non-NUCs. These are the most commonly used medications globally. The World Health Organization recommends a combination of 2 nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, most commonly tenofovir and lamivudine, or 3-TC, and then 1 non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitor. And that non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitor is called efavirenz. And the most commonly used medications worldwide is 2 NUCs and efavirenz. Then we go with the DNA of the virus. It then integrates itself into the host chromosome. That process of integration is fought by a series of medications called integrase inhibitors. And the next rising stars of HIV therapy are the integrase inhibitors. The only one that is available worldwide is mostly raltegravir, is the name of an integrase inhibitor that's used second line for worldwide therapy. And now dolutegravir is coming as a worldwide integrase inhibitor that's going to be available. Dolutegravir, there's going to be an announcement by the FDA this morning here in the US that to use dolutegravir very early in pregnancy, we are concerned about. There may be some neural tube defects with dolutegravir very early in pregnancy. So right now, efavirenz and dolutegravir, there still needs to be more study about what's the safest drug to use in pregnancy. And then finally, after the virus has integrated itself into the chromosome, the virus then uses the host cell machinery, transcription, translation, to make new viral particles, and a big protein is made in the cell of viral proteins that has to be cut up into smaller proteins by an enzyme called the protease. And the final classes of therapy that we use are called protease inhibitors. Protease inhibitors are worldwide available, but more as second-line therapy. The most common ones used worldwide are lopinavir in combination with ritonavir and something called atazanavir. So essentially, nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, integrase inhibitors, and protease inhibitors are the most commonly used HIV medications that combat HIV infection. It's important to know that everyone should be on antiretroviral therapy. That is the goal. That's what the WHO said in 2015. That's the best way to fight infection worldwide. And there are very few medical conditions where HIV should not be treated with antiretroviral therapy right away. Those conditions include opportunistic infections in the brain, TB meningitis, cryptococcal meningitis, or an opportunistic infection in the brain that is active is the only reason why you should delay antiretroviral therapy. Otherwise, any opportunistic infection you should treat to fight the opportunistic infection and with HIV treatment simultaneously. I do want to just say that because we couldn't go over all of these HIV medications, of course, in this talk, we, starting from the late 1980s, have had a number of HIV medications come out. It's really been amazing to be able to treat HIV because of all of these directed and targeted drug therapies that are available. As I already said in the introduction to the talk, introduction to management, the most commonly available HIV nucleosides used worldwide are a combination of either zidovudine, which is here, which is the first oldest HIV medication, in combination with lamivudine, and also emtricitabine. And then, of course, more commonly, what's used is tenofovir-based agents in combination with either lamivudine or emtricitabine. And then the non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, which is really the most prevalent one in use, is efavirenz. And then there's been a lot of integrase inhibitors coming out, and dolutegravir, a lot of people are very interested in because of its safety and efficacy profile. So at least in the United States, really integrase-based therapy is the most commonly used medications. We don't tend to use efavirenz as much. We don't use non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors. And we don't even use protease inhibitors as much anymore. Really, the 4 integrase inhibitors are the one most commonly used in the United States. Again, in the interest of time, I'm skipping ahead a little bit because I really want us to have a little bit of time at the end before 8 o'clock for questions from you all. At least the movement in HIV medicine is to go towards combination tablets, putting all of HIV medicines that you need to take into one single pill. The virus is very clever. It evolves resistance. You can never treat it with one medication. It really needs a combination of 3 medications, usually 2 from one class and 1 from a second class. And really now there are multiple HIV combination regimens marketed both in the United States and then marketed in India and sold worldwide, where all pills are put in combination with one pill.